27 minutes now from O'Hare to downtown. Outbound 22. Inbound Eisenhower delays down around Mannheim. It's 37 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 30. Inbound Stevenson traffic heavy central much of the way to the Ryan. Travel time of 37 minutes, 355 Lakeshore Drive. Inbound Ryan, 20 minutes, 95 to downtown. I-57, 18 minutes, side east of the merge. Issue 422, there was an earlier crash at 130th. Tollways are light. I'm Jim Calamonte. On AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center. Not as cold. Plenty of sunshine today. High of 38. 13 at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. This is a great topic. This is what I got into radio to do, to talk about the big ideas, not just the banality of electoral politics. Zach Beauchamp, writing in Vox.com. That's a left-wing outlet. Identity politics isn't hurting liberalism, it's saving it. More identity politics. What the critics lambaste as an attack on liberalism, identity politics, is actually its best form. The logical extension of liberalism's core commitment to social equality and democracy, adapted to address modern sources of inequality, writes Beauchamp. A liberalism that rejects identity politics is a liberalism for the powerful, one that relegates the interests of marginalized groups to second-class status. To say that liberalism and identity politics are at odds is to misunderstand our political situation. Identity politics isn't merely compatible with liberalism. It is, in fact, liberalism's truest face. If liberalism wishes to succeed in the 21st century, it shouldn't reject identity politics. It should embrace it. That's Zach Beauchamp. And this Vox.com is supposed to be sort of on the vanguard of left thought in America. That's the lesson that Zach Beauchamp and I would say cultural Marxists in his ranks are taking away from the electoral results in the West over the last 4 years. From the U.S. to the U.K., Brexit and Boris, to the devastating election results for the left in France, in Italy, the Netherlands, Germany. Okay. So just in case you thought, well, the moderate play, those who don't want to go, full gender as a social construct. There's got to be some give there, right? No. Nope. Wrong. Entitlements and burdens based on race or gender or orientation or identification, that can't be sustained, can it? That can't be what the left is really about, is it? Yeah. Pretty much. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Eric Kauffman, professor of politics at Birkbeck College, University of London, and author of the book White Shift, Populism, Immigration, and the Future of White Majorities. And he has also penned a provocative piece at lawliberty.org on the left and why the left is losing. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's great to be here, Dan.
Do you subscribe to my reaction to Zach Beauchamp's argument in favor of identity politics?
Well, I think it's a bit suicidal for left-wing parties to go that route. And I think, as you said, if we just look at the results, the Labour Party here in the recent British election got their worst result since 1935. And as you mentioned, the French, the Danish, and the Italian main left parties have had their worst results ever, and similarly in Germany and Sweden, and some of the worst results even going back to 1908. So really, this shift from talking about class and economics and economic redistribution to talking about identity politics and culture has really not paid dividends for the left at all. So I think it's probably a very bad strategy.
And you developed that a little bit more, why they can't move away from what Zach Beauchamp is arguing that they do. You reference David Goodhart, who recently said it's easier for right-wing parties to move left on economics and left-wing parties to move right on culture. Why is that?
Well, the key here, I think, is a kind of political correctness and taboos that emerge within activist circles in the left, which are very important in parties such as the Labour Party. So the Labour Party is largely controlled by a sort of activist group called Momentum, who very much buy into identity politics. And it's not just that it's not just that some people believe in something like trans, that the idea that gender is something that you just self-identify with and is not connected to biology, but it's that they can then make that a taboo, so you can be expelled from the party if you don't sign up to this creed. And this is something that even since their devastating loss, they've been tearing themselves apart over the trans issue. It sort of indicates that this purity spiral is driven by these taboos. So it's not just a matter of switching from economic to cultural identity issues, but it's also a matter of taboos which act as force multipliers and actually make it impossible for moderates, even if they disagree, to express those views.
It seems to me that the left, and this is an argument, so I'd be interested, maybe this is too conventional. The argument is the left is always playing the long game. They recognize that, it may be an insular minority of people in America, in the West right now, that think gender is a social construct and that you shouldn't have rights conferred or privileges really conferred based on how you identify in terms of your gender. We understand that we're in the minority now, but we also understand that if we continue to relentlessly make the case and relentlessly impose our will within the cultural institutions that we largely control, that over time, a generation or two, will have the same success in imposing our orthodoxy that we have had, say, for example, with redefinition of marriage and the gay rights movement.
Yeah, and I think that is a powerful argument, and there's a writer called Ed West who has a book out coming out in a couple of weeks, which makes that exact argument, that the right tends to win elections, but they tend to lose the culture, and I think that has been the pattern, and you're right that the cultural institutions, universities, and media and so on have become progressively captured by the progressive left, and so it is an open question as to whether the strategy might win culturally. And I don't think it's clear which way that's going to go. I would say one of the things you see in the young population is a growing split between people who, let's say, favor free speech over emotional safety, and then the other side favors emotional safety. So I think their arguments are getting some traction amongst that youngest cohort, but it's not clear that it's convincing everybody. So, but I agree with you that they do seem to be more successful in marching through the cultural institutions than they do in winning elections. It's just that right now, and certainly for the foreseeable future, for the Labour Party to win pushing these themes is essentially going to be impossible for decades. So I think they're going to have a rethink, or they're simply going to be out of power.
Are they more in danger of self-elimination on those issues, like we're talking about, using the trans issue as an example of a cultural issue, or on a matter like immigration, which you write about in your new book, White Shift, where that is more than just a cultural issue, it's also a public safety issue, properly conceived and argued, and the idea that they can stake out a position as extreme as, say, the left in this country, talking about the elimination of such a thing as an illegal immigrant, because there should be no such thing as a border, so there can be no such thing as an illegal border crossing, and we should also eliminate border enforcement agencies like ICE as well, and Customs and Border Protection. Staking out such an extreme position on that issue seems to me like it may be more dangerous electorally for the left than staking out the trans issue.
You're right, yeah. So immigration is an issue that a lot of voters care about in Europe and in Britain. And it's Labour's inability to speak to that, which helped them lose the election, just as it was the people who wanted to remain in the European Union, their inability to address people's worries about free migration from the European Union that also cost the Remain side the Brexit referendum. So, yeah, that is the key issue. And in fact, in the book, I really talk about how immigration is really becoming the key battleground in Western countries, partly because they're undergoing ethnocultural shifts in which ethnic majorities are declining, and it's in that context that the immigration issue rises up people's agendas. And what you see is that as immigration numbers rose in Europe and in Britain, immigration rose up people's priority lists and started to actually shape elections in a serious way. So, and of course, part of the problem for the left is it seems as though voters who are motivated by wanting less immigration are more likely to switch party to go to conservative parties than voters who are pro-immigration but well-off. So that kind of pro-immigration, well-off person who voted to remain in the European Union, fewer of them went over to the Labour Party. So in that exchange on immigration, a pro-immigration position tends to lose you votes. And I think there's something similar happened in the U.S. too in terms of committed people who wanted less immigration went over to Trump in a way that the pro-immigration conservative voters did not go over to Clinton in the same way. So again, that exchange seems to go more for the conservative voters. And that's kind of another reason why the left taking a very pro-immigration position is arguably shooting itself in the foot.
Sean Rosenberg, who's a sociologist at UC Irvine, recently penned a paper suggesting that the end of democracy in the West is upon us. It's going to be replaced, per these most recent election results, with populist right-wing regimes that are going to be authoritarian. And the reason that they're so popular is because that they offer simple solutions to very complex problems. I mean, that there are gaping blind spots in his argument, as far as I'm concerned. But but talking about easy arguments for complex problems. But I wanted to just get to your reaction. So now, because these center-right populist parties have been successful electorally in the recent years, we're on this march away from democracy and towards right-wing authoritarianism.
Well, I think the problem here is that there is a genuine grievance that these populist parties are bringing to the table. In some ways, they are strengthening democracy by bringing neglected interests in. So when the mainstream parties, for reasons of political correctness, weren't willing to talk about immigration, if we take Sweden prior to 2014, the interior minister tried to raise the subject of immigration levels, was sort of attacked in the media and by other politicians as a racist for doing that. And then the next year, the Sweden Democrats, the populist right party, were up to first 13% and then up to 25%. And actually now the mainstream parties are talking about immigration. So actually that introduced an issue that nobody wanted to talk about. And so it actually strengthened democracy. Now, of course, you do get populists, who are negative in some ways in terms of attacking the independence of the judiciary and so on in the media. So there are negatives to some degree in Poland and Hungary, but equally it's important to recognize that I think the liberal left side of the equation has also caused this problem by sort of their influence in liberal institutions such as the judiciary or the media, and then using those positions to pursue an activist policy. What that does is that discredits those institutions in the eyes of voters who don't share those liberal preferences. So by using institutions such as the European Union or the judiciary to advance a kind of progressive form of politics, that has been as much a cause of this loss of trust or legitimacy as populist politicians. And that's the part that I don't see a lot of progressive commentators owning up to as much. There are a few people who have pointed this out, but again, there doesn't seem to be the willingness to sort of admit the part that progressive overreach within elite institutions has played in the polarization and populism story.
He is Eric Kauffman. He's a professor of politics at Birkbeck College, University of London, author of the book White Shift, Populism, Immigration, and the Future of White Majorities. And also check out his piece, which I'll tweet out, Why the Left is Losing. That's at lawliberty.org. Professor Kauffman, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Sears gets a new lifeline. USC will phase in free tuition beginning this fall. And Under Armour has lost half its market cap since